and thank you for joining us again at Voice of Rohingya Radio, a registered nonprofit coming to you from the state of Oregon in the United States of America. I would like to thank all of our listeners who allow this program to continue to provide the latest news through our exclusive interviews, reports from inside the border, and reputable sources from around the world. If you would like to stay up to date with our program, you can view or download all of our broadcasts online at youtube.com/VOR radio, or you can join our Facebook page to find more information on past and future programs. It is May 25th, 2014. For Voice of Rohingya Radio, I am your host, Zach Taylor. New Jersey's Senator and Chairman Robert Menendez expressed deep concern of the deteriorating humanitarian crisis plaguing Myanmar Rohingya on behalf of the United States Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday, in a letter personally addressed to the Burmese president. In the letter, Senator Menendez recognized improved cooperation and ties between Myanmar and the United States over the past several years, but warned that the worsening situation in areas like Rakhine State would threaten progress. The letter cited horrific attacks including massacres, destruction of Rohingya villages through arson, and the more than 140,000 Rohingya living in internally displaced persons camps that it said were no better than holding facilities. The U.S. House Foreign Relations Committee was also critical of pending laws that would restrict interfaith marriage and limit Rohingya population growth by imposing a two-child limit on Rohingya Muslims, worrying that such legislation could constitute a rapid unraveling of Myanmar's progress. The letter ended with a plea to the Burmese president to take immediate action to end the persecution of the Rohingya and allow humanitarian aid groups to resume their life-saving work in violence-stricken Rakhine State. The investment sector is keeping a close eye on Myanmar after U.S. President Obama's recent decision to extend the Burma Responsible Investment Reporting Requirements program for another year, which requires companies to report the impact of their operations to the U.S. State Department. Due to the high risk to investors, particularly in resource-rich and conflict-ravaged Rakhine and Kachin states, investment research firm EIRIS launched an investment watch for Burma, which will help investors to identify companies doing business in the country. Reasons for investment instability range from human rights abuses to corruption, which continue to threaten and destroy lives in Myanmar, according to EIRIS, which says that the service will help investors avoid profiting at the expense of social freedoms and justice in the country. More news on the declining health and sanitation for Rohingya living in IDP camps, as the Thomson Reuters Foundation reported on Wednesday. The United Nations' latest report documents the increasing number of water points and latrines that are no longer working, and says that health problems are compounded by a general deterioration in the water, sanitation, and hygiene situation in camps, increasing the risk of waterborne diseases. The UN puts the number of people who have no secure source of water and must rely daily on humanitarian aid to survive at more than 23,000. Though aid groups have returned to crisis areas in Myanmar after fleeing in March due to violent attacks by nationalist mobs, less than 50% of the staff who left after the attacks had returned by the end of April, mainly because of their inability to find suitable accommodations and offices. Nationalists have long convinced landlords not to let their houses to aid agencies, and aid workers say they face threats and intimidation. Local authorities are still refusing to allow back in two of the largest charities that provided health care in Rakhine State before the attacks, the Nobel Prize-winning medical charity MSF and Malteser International, whose offices were attacked in March. The results from Burma's first census in 30 years may be used for political purposes, a census official said, following previous assurances from the government the data would be mainly used for development projects. The Irrawaddy reported on Thursday that while individual data will be kept confidential, the Burmese government cannot control how the aggregate results are used. The Minister of Immigration and Population said that the statistics are generalized mainly for the country's future development projects, but could be used indirectly to affect elections. In Burma, ethnic groups that pass a certain population threshold can have ethnically delineated constituencies with representatives appointed as ministers in local governments. Under military rule, ethnic minorities accuse the government of inflating the numbers of ethnic Burman majority to justify the dominance of Burman officials in government. Rent is apparently skyrocketing in Myanmar's capital. According to AFP, UNICEF's new office in Rangoon comes with a price tag in the $90,000 per month range. To put the exorbitant price in perspective, the annual rent for the space equates to the yearly salary of about 1,000 average Burmese put together. The Irrawaddy's report on the office suggests that it is being rented out by former agricultural minister for the military junta regime, with one property agent saying that former junta figures and business cronies have a dominant role in Rangoon real estate and that it is difficult to avoid renting from them. We now move to Japan, where Stateless Network Japan organized a symposium at Tokyo's Waseda University, where an UNHCR member, an award-winning American photographer, and 15 Rohingya, among others, presented information about the Rohingya and their experiences in Arakan. Members of the Burmese Rohingya Association in Japan were also present, with the daughter of the BRAJ president offering the history of the issue in Japanese for the local audience. In the BRAJ president's correspondence on the symposium, he offered the following sentiments. A bird has the right to marry, freedom to move, to make a nest, to bear kids, to bring food to their kids. But for a Rohingya born and living in Arakan, they do not have rights even equal to a bird's. Thanks again for listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio, a registered nonprofit coming to you from the state of Oregon in the United States of America. I am your host, Zach Taylor. We now take a look at news from inside the border, as many Rohingya are forced to seek medical help without access to humanitarian aid provided by groups like Doctors Without Borders, which is still having difficulties returning to troubled areas of Myanmar. The Rohingya blogger wrote on Thursday that some recently treated by the Myanmar Red Cross suffered unexpected debilitation after treatment, with one Rohingya dying, 3 losing consciousness, and 3 more experiencing abnormal effects, arriving in a worse condition than before their treatment. Villagers attempted to hail the Red Cross back to the affected patients, but no help arrived. We've received news from one of our inside sources about the fates of many Rohingya after the detention by Burmese police forces. A 30-year-old man from the Maung Da area died in the hospital after being tortured for 4 days by the police. A 47-year-old mechanic was arrested without reason 4 days ago, and our sources report that he can no longer stand or speak. A 50-year-old pharmacist was also arrested without reason 4 days ago. He is now in critical condition after being severely beaten. Our sources also report that the border security guards and police are terrorizing Rohingyas in Maung Da and Butidong, saying that they have a list of 500 people to be arrested supposedly in connection to riots 2 years ago, and that law and order has all but broken down in Arakan, saying that one can arrest a Rohingya without any due cause and extort a ransom, which if not paid can mean 5 years imprisonment. Rohingya are losing any optimism they may have had as the new border security force is looking to be even more corrupt than the dreaded former border security agency, Nasaka, many feeling they've been tossed out of the frying pan and into the fire. RB News reported yesterday that 8 families were forced from their homes in the town of Butidong recently. The families, who have lived in the homes for more than 20 years, were the target of the racially motivated township administrator, who told locals in a meeting, quote, "You Kalars are nothing. I don't consider Kalars as human beings," end quote. Kalar, of course, is a racial slur. I'd like to thank you again for tuning in today to Voice of Rohingya Radio. As always, you can view and download our broadcasts at youtube.com/VOR radio, and you can join our Facebook page to find more information on the program. I close today with words from former United States President John F. Kennedy, who said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." Already having arrived at the former, Myanmar is stained with the blood from countless violent revolutions. Isn't it time to use the democratic momentum to encourage peaceful revolution? Myanmar's history is punctuated by moments of interreligious and interethnic peace and cooperation. But as the pages have turned to a very dark chapter, perhaps it's time for a hard-earned happy ending. Let this chapter, the one being written today in blood, end with a period, and let the world see that it is a period of peace. For Voice of Rohingya Radio, this is Zach Taylor, signing out.